Hello, folks. Welcome back to Reality Check with Arvind Swaminathan. Hi. Important things today. I was going to start with something else, but there's a very disturbing bit of news that came out. A globe with a map on it. The Taliban seem to think that they own not only Afghanistan, but also all of Pakistan, more than half of Gujarat, a third of Rajasthan, all of Haryana, Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and Jammu and Kashmir. Aksai Chin and Ladakh and Leh they've given to China. Plus, on the western side, they've taken almost half or two-thirds of Iran, as well as a good chunk out of Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. I mean, where they get this from, I don't know. They're trying to overrun Pakistan. Yes, you can understand that. Why? Do you remember that Pakistan has a nuclear arsenal, which is what they're after? The dirty bomb, which the whole world is frightened of. An atomic arsenal or a nuclear arsenal in the wrong hands is something really nasty. And what I can't understand is the government of India is either not seeing this or don't think it's important enough to even comment on. Nowhere in the rest of the world has there been any outcry. Why? Why is everybody sleeping on this? I don't understand this at all. Everybody had better get their act together and start doing something about this. Because if the Taliban, i.e. Afghanistan, overruns Pakistan, what will happen to Baluchis, Pashtuns, and those who live in Gilgit and Baltistan? They get massacred. Their women will be raped and taken over. Menfolk, well, they don't exist. Once they've got a nuclear bomb, why do they need them? So, it's something we'd better all get our act together on and do something about very quickly. And Pakistan had better grow up. See, this is something I've never understood. Somebody said this centuries ago, a poet, who said, the world has lived for centuries, or mankind has lived for centuries. It is true. And still, kings, generals, and now presidents send their armies to war over a hapless, weaker people to take what doesn't belong to them. I mean, and then he added, yes, mankind has lived for centuries, it is true. He has merely grown older. He has not grown wiser. I'm wondering, when will mankind get a little wisdom into their little heads and start growing up? And let his words come true and say, mankind has grown wiser. I'm hoping I see that in my lifetime. Let's hope. Now we get back to the main thing that I wanted to talk about, the Nehru legacy. And Nehru means Congress legacy. Now I don't know how many people realize this, but Nehru is a very, very self-centered and egoistic person. He couldn't stand any antagonism or any competition because he knew one thing. In an open debate, he wouldn't stand a snowball's chance in hell. He had nothing in the way of intelligence. That is why he aligned himself with Gandhiji. Now let's go on and let's see what he did and how much hate there was in that person. Everything was quite clear when Nehru and Subhash Bose stood for the presidency of the Congress Party. Subhash Bose won. And Nehru got hold of Gandhiji and said, look, this fellow wants militancy and so on, you better get him to resign. I should be president. And of course, Mahatma Gandhi prevailed on Bose to step down. Bose stepped down and went off for his Indian National Army. He got that together. Nehru went to a lot of trouble to eradicate all contributions from anybody else except him, his Congress party, and this non-violent movement. So much so that in our history books we are taught we got independence through non-violence, which means Nehru and Gandhi. And yet, around 1952, Clement Attlee, on a trip from the East going back to the UK, stopped in Calcutta for a day or so, and the governor of West Bengal at the time, he asked him, point blank, a very direct question, what was it that really made you leave India and grant us independence in such a hurry? What was the matter? Was it Gandhi and his non-violence? How much influence did he have on your decision? And Attlee said, minimal, almost no effect whatsoever. But what he did admit and he said was that we were afraid that the inspiration from the Indian National Army might grow into and affect the Royal Indian Army. And if that Indian Army mutinied, and the signs were there, because in Karachi the troops had refused to fire on civilians. And in 1946, the then Royal Indian naval ship Dufferin, the Navy mutinied and said, no, this is not good enough. That frightened Attlee and the British government and got them to leave in a hurry. And yes, they left in a hurry. In 1947, August, there were only about 1,200 British troops left to guard the entire western India and Pakistan border. What could they do? Nothing. All the others had been evacuated by the 7th of August that year. Now, what about Nehru? What did he do after independence? What really not just hurt him, but angered him so much, and that his anger turned into hatred. You see, Pakistan had been created, both East and West, for Muslims. Therefore, as far as he was concerned, India was for Hindus, basically, because they were the vast majority. Now, when the Congress Working Committee sent out a note to all the provincial Congress presidents, whom would you prefer as India's first Prime Minister? Out of the 15, 12 voted in favour of Sardar Patel, 2 for Sitaramaiah, and 1 for Kriplani. Not one of them wanted Nehru as Prime Minister. Not one. And this really not only hurt him, but made him so angry. So angry and so full of hate. He transferred that hate into total anti-India policy which he enacted. Now let's see what he did. What were his decisions? And we're still paying for those decisions, unfortunately, because they were enforced and reinforced by his family members, his daughter, his grandson, and then his great-grandson and his mother. Let's see what he did. First, 1949, he permitted or accepted Chinese invasion and occupation of Tibet as something of total inconsequence to us. Well, we were to feel the effect of that later on in Aksai Chin, Ladakh and Leh, and then further in the eastern border areas. In 1948, November 23rd, Parliament requested Government of India to formulate and implement a uniform civil code applicable to everybody. Nehru's answer to that was around 1956 to 1960, he brought out the Hindu civil code and implemented it. Why only Hindus? Why not the rest? Why was he creating this divide? Even more basic was this. when Pakistan, both East and West, were created for Muslims, why did he permit Muslims to stay in India? If that was going to be the case, why have partition at all? We're now beginning to feel the pinch as things have been unfolding now. 1950, he added this to the constitution, that you can teach Islam and Christianity anywhere, in schools, colleges, madrasas, churches, mosques, anywhere. But you cannot teach Hinduism anywhere. This is against the constitution. All donations to Muslim, Christian churches, mosques, madrasas and so on, they retain. There's no tax on them. Any donations to Hindu temples or Hindu temple trusts is either taxed or the government takes over those trusts and takes over all that money. And they uses it to pay the salaries of, Maulanas and Maulvis in madrasas. Even though the constitution specifically says you have to keep state and religion separate. So why are they interfering again? I mean, the constitution is an absolute mess. It's so full of contradictions. Is there any such thing anymore? No wonder most of the states and most governments ignore it and do what they feel like. 1954, he brought in Article 370 and 35A, which made Jammu and Kashmir virtually a foreign country. Yes, the Indian government retained foreign policy and defense as part of their field. But for everything else, they had no powers. No Indian soldier could get into Jammu and Kashmir unless the Jammu and Kashmir government specifically asked them to come in and intervene. They were only there to guard Jammu and Kashmir borders against all foreign forces trying to change those borders. That's all the powers the government of India had. Their finances were coming from here, and we had no further powers. He neglected defense to such a low level. I mean, as if it didn't matter to him at all. Why? We have no enemies. What about Pakistan? Has he forgotten that? 1948, when the Indian Army had begun to clear out and take back Jammu and Kashmir, which was occupied by Pakistani Rangers and tribals, he called a unilateral ceasefire and then took the matter to UN, even though he had been warned by Lord Mountbatten that if you take it to UN, it will lay there for 50 years and nothing will happen. Maybe that's what he wanted. He did something even more silly. He took away all powers from the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, as Maharaja Hari Singh, and treated Sheikh Abdullah as if he was the ruler, which made it again a totally Muslim enclave. Why? Now here, immediately you begin to see his anti-Hindu mindset. He had begun to hate Hindus in such a way that first the Hindu civil code, only Hindus come under it. Their personal law and everything goes by the board. We now come under that particular civil code. But for Muslims, they have a field day. They can pick and choose the Indian Penal Code or the Shariat law. 1954, he created or instituted a Waqf board. And that act, plus the 65 Waqf Board Act and the 1995 Waqf Board Act, again all Congress party thing, and again reinforced in 2013 by the Manmohan Singh government, that Muslims have the first right over all of India's assets. Why? Are Hindus just there to be kicked and stomped on and work like work their socks off just for Muslims? I mean, does that make sense? Does that even look as if partition was meant to put Muslims in Pakistan, plus what is now Bangladesh? Now Muslims are pouring in from Bangladesh. Why? They get everything here. They get reservations in jobs. They get reservations in schools, colleges, universities, jobs. They do criminal acts, it's brushed under the carpet. If a Hindu does something silly, he has a book thrown at him. Why are we favoring Muslims so much? The Waqf Board Act of 1995 has ensured that they can take over the whole country, every square inch of land. And you can't do anything about it. You want to argue the case, you have to go to the Waqf Board Tribunal, where they use Shariat law. How many non-Muslims know anything about Shariat law? I mean, they just have to go somewhere and say, this is Waqf Board land. That's it. There's no argument. It is. You want to survey it? They send their survey. Yes, this is Waqf Board land. Where do we go from there? This is, if you remember, going back to that Afghanistan bigwigs interview just after their takeover from Biden. India is a work in progress. Now you understand the full meaning. First, they fill this place with Muslims. We now have 300 million Muslims in India, at least, maybe more. 60 or 70 million of them came in from Bangladesh, just to swell their numbers. Plus, you remember Muslims could, until a couple of years ago, marry, divorce as often as they wanted. A divorce took less than a minute. All he had to say was talaq, talaq, talaq 3 times. That's it. He doesn't have to pay her any, alimony or maintenance after 3 months. She had no further rights, nothing. And you wonder why. A lot of Muslim women would welcome this ban of the triple talaq. Because now they have some security. Now they have to go through the law courts for any divorce. But the 4 wives scheme is still there. And obviously that has to stop. Because in the past they may have had 12, 16 wives. 2, 3 children from each one. There you go. 12 wives, 3 children, that's 36. They just keep multiplying. Do we need some more? All other religions, all other groups have understood that, look, 2 children is enough. We can't afford to look after them. Even better or even worse, as far as the rest of us are concerned, those going on a Hajj pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia were given a subsidy. I mean, what's going on? What? Is this keeping government and religion separate? When even the government of India used to ignore the very constitution which is supposed to uphold and protect. Why should anybody else? And they don't. You go to Tamil Nadu, they don't think twice about kicking Brahmins or Hindus. And they do it openly. Isn't this against the very tenets of the constitution which guarantees secularism and equality and democracy? Well, 2 of those 3 tenets have been thrown out. There's no equality and there is no secularism. And if the center doesn't observe it, why should the states? This is their attitude. Now you see, going back to Nehru, his policy was, we don't need a defense, any defense. Well, Aksai Chin is still in Chinese hands. That's almost 40,000 square kilometers. It isn't a small amount, it's not a small joke. And his excuse was, not a blade of grass grows there. Well, not a blade of grass grows in large areas of Rajasthan, which is desert. Do we still hang on to it? Why? It is our territory. Just like Aksai Chin and everywhere else. Now, he cannot understand, so he never could understand what this country really needs. And then he instituted and brought in License Raj. Now, License Raj is an open invitation to corruption. And boy, did it happen. Plus, this is the British Raj. India was now a Congress colony. Not a British colony, but a Congress colony. And this continued until about 1993 or 1994. Why? Because one of the things it did was, anything we made or manufactured was priced out of the international market. Because the scale was so small, it would never compete with anything from abroad. And unfortunately, we're still into that mindset. We haven't got License Raj out of our minds. For instance, you see ambassadors made cars, the old Morris Oxford. Never in their history did they ever produce more than 38,000 cars in a year. Why? Anywhere else in the world, if they didn't produce 500,000 to 1,000,000 cars a year, they'd go out of business. How did they stay in business producing a maximum of 38,000 units? How? You can't say there was no need in India, no demand. There was. There was a 3 or 4 year waiting list. And it was being sold in black. And one of the things people did was, they'd order one in different areas, different parts of India. They'd buy it at 18,000 and sell it next day at 21,000. Black money. Nehru and his policies and Indira Gandhi and her policies encouraged and enforced the black economy. To such an extent that almost 80 to 90% of our economy was black, which means people didn't pay tax on it. It was a cash economy. And you wondered why the banks never did much in the way of work. Whenever they did, the interest rates they charged were anything from 15 to 18 to 25%, which is almost as bad as money lenders in villages. I mean, the Congress working committees in all the provinces, as they were at independence, understood that Nehru was an idiot. He had no idea about what to do and how to do it. And even getting together India as one unit was not Nehru but Patel. And yet we never heard of him for years until this BJP government comes in and starts telling us about Patel. Sardar Patel, I mean. What happened? Did we ever hear of people like Sardar Patel, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, Tilak, Gokhale, Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhagat Singh were all forgotten people. They did nothing. Veer Savarkar. Now, Nehru tried to wipe all of them away from our memories. They never existed. Or they were undesirable people. And I'll tell you what I've heard. A lot of people say that Godse, Nathuram Godse, should have shot Nehru, not Gandhi. And from what we see that Nehru has done, maybe they are right. I mean, Nehru hanging around until 1964. I mean, he just made an absolute mess of India. He paid no attention to agriculture. It's so horribly neglected. In fact, during his tenure, one of his ministers was asked, look, supposing something happened, where are your food reserves? You know what he said? He said, Kansas. I mean, when I heard this, I was amazed. I mean, the shock was almost too much. Kansas, in the US. And it wasn't until 1964-65, 2 successive years of drought, that finally the government of India woke up and started talking about and doing something for agriculture. And even there, it was the farmers themselves who came forward. The government did damn all. Sorry to use such words, but I don't like it. But those Congress governments did absolutely nothing. They probably never set foot in a village once they come into town. They had no idea. So you see, folks, not only Nehru, his stupidity, to make everything pro-Muslim. Indira Gandhi was a Muslim. When she married Feroz Gandhi, well, his actual name was Feroz Jahangir Khan. She assumed the name Maimuna Begum. Muslim. It was on the advice of Mahatma Gandhi that they changed it to Gandhi to sound as if they were Parsi. As Muslims, their political careers were over. Now you see, 1971, from a stupendous, thundering victory achieved by the Indian Armed Forces under Manekshaw, she snatched an inglorious defeat. All that the army had gained from that, from Pakistan and so on, she gave back. When the whole Kashmir issue of Pakistan occupied Kashmir could have been solved, we could have taken it back then. We could have converted Pakistan into half its size. The Balochi people wanted independence from them. They don't like the Punjabi clique ruling them. But no, nothing was done. Same old stalemate. So we had 1999, Kargil. Plus, if you really look at it, what we've suffered for the last 30 years, the terrorist barrage that has come in from Pakistan, not just directly on the western border, but through Nepal and through Bangladesh and through Kerala from West Asia. All this could have been avoided if either Nehru or Indira Gandhi had the brains to look forward a little, which obviously they didn't. Just not only that, there are a few other things which you must look at. The effect of these disastrous decisions made by these two people we're still living with today. And the 1995 Waqf Board Act put the final seal on giving India to Muslims. Plus, if you remember, 1991, the Places of Worship Act. It froze all such places of worship as they were on August 15th, 1947. And who are the sufferers? Non-Muslims. The Waqf Board Act ensured that now they can take over the whole of India and either make us convert, drive us out of India, or kill us, because it's their property then. Fortunately, the press took it up, we took it up in one of our videos, and the Supreme Court has taken cognizance of all this, and they've begun to question. And I'm hoping the government of India will repeal this Waqf Board Act. Because this was reinforced in 2013 by Manmohan Singh and his government, again a Congress government, that Muslims have the first right on all of India's assets. I don't understand this at all. Where did he get this from? Plus, the corruption spread by the Congress party since 1947, it just beggars belief. I don't think so much existed anywhere. And Nehru did one other thing. He destroyed the entire administration. Why? You don't believe me? Okay. There's a man called S.A. Venkatraman, an ICS officer, who was then, I think, Secretary for Commerce. Nehru had a pet project, and this man had put on there an honest opinion which he had. This is not in the best interest of this country. That stymied all of Nehru's plans immediately, and Nehru said, okay, I'll show you. His vindictive and hateful nature, this brought it out very clearly. There were 5 or 6 or 7 CBI inquiries against Mr. Venkatraman. He was convicted for corruption. Why? Not because they could prove anything, but because he could not produce a receipt for 1 bottle of whiskey and 1 bag of tamarind. Now he was given 6 months imprisonment. When he appealed, he found him guilty again. He was given 2 years rigorous imprisonment. And I remember telling my father then, this was in 1954, I was 13 then. I told him, Dad, Nehru has destroyed the administration. Because now nobody is going to give an honest opinion. They will all become yes men. Because Nehru has told everybody, I don't want you to think. I want you to do as I tell you. And when I want you to think, I will tell you what to think and how to think. Plus, it sent a clear message to every IAS and ICS officer. Do what the political boss tells you, without question, and do what their friends in business tell you or in industry tell you. That way, you'll get money in the bank and promotions and more power and more money in your bank. You give an honest opinion, you'll end up like S.A. Venkatraman, in prison and out of work. Now, it's not a small thing. All these are things which Nehru did because of his ignorance and his total lack of any form of intelligence. And I heard this from other old folk as well, that look, his father, or we told his father, Motilal Nehru, sent him into politics. Why? Nehru was a trained lawyer. He could have made a good living. But he said Motilal Nehru knew one thing, that if he told Jawaharlal Nehru to go and earn his living as a lawyer, that man would have starved to death. He was that stupid and ignorant. I'm sorry, but his, how shall I put it, way of conducting business on behalf of India, you can see what it did to us. What Mr. Modi has done in 8 years, the Congress party hasn't even touched 1/4 of it in 67 years. That is the difference. The ignorance of Nehru and the Congress party. Because let's face it, much of what Congress does today is a legacy of Nehru. They're just continuing what he started. There's no change. And as long as we continue with this, we're in serious trouble. And now we have this added lunacy of the Taliban hoping to take over Pakistan, and with it the nuclear arsenal which Pakistan has. Now you begin to understand how difficult life is for us at this moment. And the Taliban has to be curbed and controlled and kept within Afghanistan. I don't want us to be in this ridiculous position where we have to fight on behalf of Pakistan to save Pakistan. Because at this rate, that's what's going to happen. Remember, Joe Biden left the Taliban with an air force as well. Now, as I said before, mankind has lived for centuries. It is true. And still armies, kings, generals, Presidents send their armies to war over a hapless people whom they hope are weaker than they are. Mankind has lived for centuries, it is true. But he's merely grown older. When oh when will he grow wiser? Thanks, folks. Sorry it's taken a little longer, but a lot of these things people don't think about anymore. Until you get to the root, you're not going to find the solution. That is why I found it necessary to go that far back. I hope you understand, and I hope you like. If you do, please subscribe. Please send it on to your other groups and share. Ask them to share it with their groups. See you next time.